Firstly, this is a young woman who, with her friends, went and joined ISIS knowingly. She was part of one of the most brutal terrorist groups of recent years, and that's saying something. She pretended after ISIS lost that she'd sort of accidentally wandered off, as any of us might. I mean, any of us, Rita, you, me, anyone, I might accidentally go and join a head-chopping, head-hacking group in a foreign country. No, absolute nonsense. She knew what she was doing, and in my view, she should be the first to have her citizenship withdrawn.
With the
British
US,
citizenship.
President Joe Biden appeared with Late Night with Seth Meyers, and it went as well as you'd expect.
So I told you all there was going to be an American president who said to Putin, come do whatever you want to NATO. If the other guys on our team don't pay up every single cent they promised to pay for. I mean, what are we talking about here?
He then told one of his favourite stories.
American people are incredible, and we're the best. I was asked by Xi Jinping about when I was in the Tibetan mountains with him, and he said, "Can you define America for him?" I said, "Yeah, one word: possibilities."
Douglas, President Biden has managed to go through this entire presidency getting a fairly easy run from the media, managing the media, giving them nothing but crumbs, rarely answering unscripted, pre-submitted questions, and doing vapid talk shows like that.
Well, at least he did manage to sum up America in one word that time. You'll remember that previously, when he told that story, or a version of that story on the White House lawn, he said, I can sum up America in one word, which is Himalaya, boom, boom. And you could see even Kamala Harris was starting to get worried in the background.
America is a nation that can be defined in a single word. I was in the foothills of the Himalayas with Xi Jinping, traveling with him. We traveled 17,000 miles when I was vice president. I don't know that for a fact.
Look, the American media are simply, as so much media is around the world, it's a partisan operation. Most of the media in America is Democrat. Most of it is simply rooting for its guy. Certainly most of these late night talk show hosts, they're just putting their own shoulder to the wheel and hoping that they can push Biden right into November and beyond. That's the job of much of that sort of legacy media, I'd say legacy comedy sort of world as well. Of course they wouldn't ask him a difficult question. Why would they? They might trip him up. And he's good enough at tripping himself up. As we saw there repeatedly in that interview, if you can call it an interview, he just sort of rambled, interrupted himself, lost his train of thought, and did that thing he does where he sort of forgets what he's going to say, and then he says, but anyway. And normally, when somebody completely loses their train of thought, and obviously is losing their train of thought, people think, but no, the audience there in the studio and everyone else sort of goes, ha, that's just one of his things. He just says, anyway, I can't remember what I was going to say. Anyway, it doesn't matter. It's really not on. And I've said to you before, Rita, I regard this as being very sad. Joe Biden has been in politics for a very long time, and whatever you think of him, has been a public servant for decades. And it's just really not good for him or his family or the country that people just keep pretending that he's on top seasonal form.
Now, he also shared a trip to an ice cream parlour, surprise, surprise, with Seth Meyers. And between mouthfuls of ice cream, he made this very bold, very important declaration about a ceasefire.
Can you give us a sense of when you think that ceasefire will start, sir?
Well, I hope by the beginning of the weekend. The end of the weekend. At least my national security advisor tells me that we're close. We're close. It's not done yet. And my hope is by next Monday, we'll have a ceasefire.
Okay, thank you.
Douglas, you've spent a lot of time in Israel in recent months, so you know what's happening on the ground there. A ceasefire by Monday, is that realistic?
Well, there's two things that have to be said about this. The first thing is, it's just extraordinary the way in which America and other allies of Israel demand that Israel stops just at the point that it's about to win. In the south of Gaza, the IDF has got Hamas in a corner, and they need to, in my view, finish the job. It's very strange the way that so many allies of Israel say you can win a bit, but not completely. I mean, we don't do this, as Neil Ferguson pointed out in an excellent op-ed in Bloomberg this week. We don't do this with Ukraine. I mean, Biden and all the other Western leaders aren't saying Ukraine can only win a little bit. They're saying we're with you until victory. Why is it the case that they do that with Ukraine, and quite rightly in my view with Ukraine, but they don't do it, quite wrongly in my view, with Israel? It's an extraordinary standard. And the second thing is, that has to be said, is the deal that has been on the table in recent days is a disastrous deal for Israel. It involves handing over small numbers of beleaguered, traumatized pensioners who have been held in Hamas tunnels and swapping them for terrorists in Israeli prisons who have carried out attacks on Jews. That is the deal, and it's something like a 10-to-1 ratio that was offered to them of hostages from Israel versus prisoners in Israeli prisons who are there for carrying out terror. And despite the fact that the deal is so advantageous to Hamas, it is Hamas that has turned the deal down. You know, this goes back to a crucial thing in warfare, which is that it is so much easier for people to end up leaning on and putting pressure on their allies and forgetting the fact that the people who don't listen to them, i.e. Hamas, are precisely the people that you need to direct your attention towards. And to my mind, it is a deep shame that in country after country, people have forgotten that equilibrium.
Very well said. I can't add anything more to that. I just want to ask you about what's happening in the UK with the Islamic State bride, Shamima Begum, having her last appeal lost against the British government's decision to revoke her UK citizenship. All the three judges dismissed her case. They said she made a calculated decision to join Islamic State. But of course, the usual suspects are appalled. Guardian types are arguing that in a civilised country, Shamima wouldn't have been made stateless. Is this a miscarriage of justice or a dose of instant karma?
The Guardian seems to think that every country is a totally appalling country unless it follows the precise advice of the Guardian. And if we did follow the precise advice of the Guardian, we'd be Cuba by now. But the interesting thing about the Shamima Begum case is several things. Firstly, this is a young woman who, with her friends, went and joined ISIS knowingly. She was part of one of the most brutal terrorist groups of recent years, and that's saying something. She pretended after ISIS lost that she'd sort of accidentally wandered off, as any of us might. I mean, any of us, Rita, you, me, anyone, I might accidentally go and join a head-chopping, head-hacking group in a foreign country. No, absolute nonsense. She knew what she was doing, and in my view, she should be the first to have her citizenship withdrawn. British citizenship is not a right. It's not a right you can simply have. And sometimes you can join the enemy, and sometimes you can be a traitor to your country, and then if you lose, you can join back to the other side. No, no, no. And just as Shamima Begum has had her British citizenship revoked, I would like to see plenty more people have their citizenship revoked, including the Hamas leaders who live in the UK. But the other thing that has to be said quickly about this is all of the people who carry water for this horrible young woman always use a very interesting word. They say she was groomed, because that's such an incredibly meaning-filled term now. They say she was groomed by ISIS. Well, every single one of these commentators has had and all the lawyers and all the politicians and others who use this case, all of them have shown much more sympathy for this horrible young woman than for the thousands and thousands of British girls who were actually groomed and gang raped by immigrant gangs in Britain in recent years. I am so appalled, although I'm not surprised, that so many people have made a stand on this horrible ISIS girl and not on the innocent girls that they could have made a stand on and didn't because they were too cowardly.
Just finally, we do live in a warped time where anti-racists are virulently racist and those who call themselves anti-fascists behave like fascists. So I guess we shouldn't be surprised that a group that calls itself Hope Not Hate, who claim to defend and champion and promote democracy and the rule of law, are nothing of the sort. Just another pack of intolerant leftists who want to intimidate those who question their ideology. You've written about this group. Tell me just what they've done recently and how they're trying to shame people from following causes they don't back.
They're an utterly shameful group. They're one of a number of organisations in the UK, as in the US and Australia, who pretend to be anti-fascist, but seem to me just to need to drop the anti bit. This group also is wildly misnamed. It calls itself Hope Not Hate. It should reverse it. It's hate, not hope. It spends its time smearing people, libeling people, and doing very, very sinister tactics, about which I think there's a lot more to come out, in order to try to pressure people in society to having the precise far-left political views that Hope Not Hate has. This past week, they dropped a bombshell revelation. They said they had a deep investigation into the tweets, Rita, imagine it, tweets and likes of tweets by somebody who happens to be one of the owners of GB News, which is one of the balancing channels in the UK. And because he'd liked tweets they didn't like, they said this is an extraordinary investigation. Of course, it's not an investigation. It's not an investigative journalism piece. All they did was sit eating crisps at their mum's keyboard whilst doing screenshots. But these people want to be the policemen and the linesmen of our society. And you know what? Groups like this have had nothing to say about the weeks and weeks of anti-Semitic hate marches on the streets of London and other cities. They don't have anything to say about that, it seems. But my, they can really come down hard on somebody they don't like who likes a tweet that they don't like. They're pathetic.
Douglas Murray, it's always a pleasure, and we look forward to having you in the country in the coming weeks.
Can't wait to be back.